just so grateful for the ministry that surrounds us here. It's unbelievable, and I just thank all of you guys who are so anointed, so willing to lay down your life, so willing to put it all on the line and go for God and go for the things that He has for us. It's so incredible. So this morning, it's funny, I was in Jean's hospitality class this morning, and she's talking about how she's writing all these notes for every time she speaks like 14 pages of notes. And I'm like, me too. 14 is the number. Every time I preach, I make 14 pages of notes on the computer. I mean, this is a lot of notes. You can't even use that many notes. It's just my thoughts. I just keep typing and typing. But the reason is because the goodness of God doesn't have an end. It doesn't have a cap or a limit. The knowledge and the wealth of heaven it just doesn't stop flowing. It never stops producing revelation. It never stops revealing the new thing to you. And I just want to encourage you guys, like, when I step into a place of ministry like this, it pushes me a little. It pushes me to dig deeper and delve deeper into those realms. But I don't want to just be that person. I'm going to be the person that digs into those realms every day of my life, and you can too. And I just want to tell you that whatever your question is before God, whatever your heart is wondering, the answers are right there in front of you. I wish, really, this morning I was like, I wish that we could have church at 6 a.m. because 5:30 is my hour when God speaks to me. This morning at 5:30, I was just in prayer, and it's like that's when the heavens open for me. That's when I hear the voice of God. That's when I see all this stuff, and I was like, can we just have church now so I could just say it now? I don't want to wait for 3 hours or whatever to have to say it. But this morning I was in tears because for all my 14 pages of notes, God was revealing something all new to me. He was just pouring out this story of love and I hope I can communicate it right now the way that He was communicating it to me. But I saw God standing as the conductor of an orchestra, and He was keeping the time. And He was looking at all of the people playing all the instruments. And He was pointing at the sections that needed to start playing. And He was delivering something to the orchestra it was the glue of the symphony. And it overwhelmed me because I thought, God, we're just a part of your symphony. I'm a part of your symphony. I have a part. And not only that, but the music that's in front of me. I don't know how many of you guys are familiar with music or musicians, but if you are, you would know like what that music looks like the sheet music with the bars and the staffs and with all the notes, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, all the notes. And you would be looking at that piece of paper playing the music that's in front of you. But God was saying, I wrote this part for you. This is your part. I wrote it for you. It's not for someone else. I know you. I created you. I knew you before the foundations of the earth, and I wrote this part for you. It's meant for you. It's not meant for someone else, and you're not meant to play someone else's part. And I saw the pianist sitting there playing all these beautiful notes up the scales and down the scales, all the sharps and flats and majors and minors and all the A, B, C, D, E, F, Gs. And I saw the pianist looking across at the drummer and being like, I wish I was a drummer. I wish I was the drummer. It's so easy. They don't have to learn all these notes and all of these different things and all of these different black keys and white keys. They just get to keep the beat. Oh, God, can I be a drummer? Why am I not a drummer? And God was saying, I wrote this part for you, though. This is your part. I made you a pianist. I made you to know this part and to flow in it and to master it. I made you to master this part. And the drummer was standing there with his drums. He was looking at the ones and fives and the fives and ones and beating away on the drum. And he didn't have all those notes. And he was looking across saying, oh, I wish I was a pianist. I wish I could play more than the rhythm. I wish I could play all those notes, all those cool notes. They're so awesome. And I saw this in the kingdom that we're looking at our brothers and sisters and we're looking at their anointings and we're looking at their gifts and we're measuring ourselves by something, but it's devaluing who we are in the kingdom. It's devaluing us, and it's not the plan of God. It never was. He never meant for you to look across the way at your brother and sister in the symphony and wish that you were them, but He meant for you to look at them and champion them. He meant for you to play your part well so they could play their part well, so that the sound that would come out of you and your family, the family of Christ, would make a difference in the room. There's a crowd of people, and they've come to hear sweet, sweet music. And the music that they're going to hear is going to change the direction of their life. It's going to change their walk. But we have to play our part. We have to know what God created us to be. I have to know what my part is in the orchestra, and I have to follow the conductor's lead. And I thought, as I'm sitting there playing my part, there's a lot of parts. There's the brass section, there's the percussion section, there's the woodwinds, there's the strings, there's all these beautiful different parts in an orchestra that make this incredible sound. And if you saw the music of each of those different parts, all of those different sheet musics that they're all supposed to play, from a natural mindset for someone who doesn't know music, you'd be like, this isn't the same song. This isn't even the same song. How is this going to sound like a symphony? But the conductor knows. The conductor knows what he's doing. He knows what part the pianist is supposed to play, and he knows what part is going to complement it over here on the bass. He knows what the flute is going to start playing that's going to ride the notes of the piano and just harmonize it perfectly. He knows. Our conductor knows. He wrote the parts. He wrote the part with you in mind, and he knows how it all comes together because he understands the big picture. And sometimes we don't always understand the big picture. And I thought, I just saw someone sitting there playing their part, just tapping away. Maybe the bass part. It's the bass. It doesn't have as much movement as some of the other instruments. It holds the ground, boom, 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 boom. A lot of the same notes. And I saw the bass player going, when is it going to be time for my solo? Why do they get to have their solo right now? Boom, 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 boom. And he's listening to all these solos, and he's saying, what about my solo? I want my solo. This isn't fair. I'm not having a solo. But the conductor is like, but I know when your part's coming. I know when your solo is coming. Don't fret. Don't look to the left and the right. Don't compare yourself to the timing of someone else's journey and the timing of someone else's song, because I have your part played out from beginning to end, and I know the value in it, and I've placed value in it. Woo! I was in tears this morning. I don't know if I'm communicating it the best, but I was in tears this morning thinking, we are all a part of that symphony. And do you know what the most important thing is when you're playing in that kind of environment? There's almost nothing more important, aside from knowing your part and mastering your instrument, there's nothing more important than keeping your eyes on the conductor. You cannot function properly without keeping your eyes on him. You won't know the nuances of where to come in. You might miss your part. And when he speaks and when he gives direction, it's subtle. He doesn't yell it out. He doesn't say, it's your turn, Eve. Start playing. That's not how it works, right? He gives you a nod. He gives you one of these. He goes, that's it. That's all you get. Your eyes have got to be glued to him, or you're going to miss your part. We're waiting for this loud, booming voice out of the sky of God to say, come on, this is my direction from heaven. But he's giving us subtle hints, but we have to be fixed on his eyes. We've got to be fixed on him in order to know, or we're going to miss it. He doesn't want you to miss it. He doesn't want you to miss it. He's prepared this whole symphony for you to showcase his glory, to showcase you. You get to play a part. You get to play a part in eternity. You get to have an impact on what it sounds like to the world. You get to contribute to what the people in the audience are hearing, and that sound is going to move them. Music moves you. And we are just a part of that symphony of heaven. And God is the conductor, and he's saying, follow my lead. Follow my rhythm. Follow my eyes. Follow my voice. Don't look to the left. Don't look to the right. Don't look across the way and think that your brother has it easier than you, because they have their own burdens to bear. They have their own challenges to overcome, but I've made you to play your part, and I've made you to play it well. Thank you, Lord. I am so privileged to be a part of that symphony. And, my life, looking at my life, And I thought about, us as a church, and I thought, here we are as a church body, as a people, as a body of believers, as a people who decides to come together and join our lives together to follow God. And God has spoken to us a lot of things. I think in this last year, God has flooded us, I would say, with the prophetic. I mean, we've been so blessed by the prophetic. We've had Kathy Campbell, Andre Bronkhorst, Ed Trout. These are some mighty, powerful men and women of God who bring some clarity that is just unbelievable. And God is flooding us with the prophetic right now. If you look back at all the things that He's said to us as a body and to some of us as individuals, I could write a book from it. It's like the depths of it are so huge. And it's so important for us as we face trials or as we walk through the times where we're not hearing the prophetic words. Like this last week, I didn't get a prophetic word, but I have a word. But I have my word from God, and it's so important for me not to forget it. Not to forget what God said to me and where He's called me out of and where He's calling me into. I was reading about Moses and the Israelites, and I just love also the fact that even in the Old Testament, it's like the parallels and the shadows they never get old. Like, they're just always fresh. So I was like, yeah, that's so it. That's us. And I was reading the whole story of Moses. And so, the Hebrews were enslaved by the Egyptians, and the Hebrews cried out to God for deliverance because of the way they were being treated. And they were being treated that way, by the way, because they were a strong and a mighty nation, really, by numbers, because they were multiplying so quickly that the Egyptians were afraid of them. So they put them into bondage and into slavery so that they couldn't, rise up and take over. So really, it was like this interesting scenario for them where it was like the blessing that God had promised Abraham, like your children will be as many as the grains of the sand. It was almost like coming to pass, but it got them in trouble for a little bit. And so they cried out to God and they said, God, deliver us. Okay, so they said that and God responded. He heard. God heard and He responded. As soon as they cried out, He went to Moses and He revealed Himself to Moses. And Moses was the anointed of God, right? Like, that's really important. Moses was the man for the job. He was the anointed of God to lead these people out of their bondage. But he looked at himself as inadequate, and he saw himself as lacking. He said, I can't speak. He had a stutter. He wasn't the coolest guy ever. He had run away from Egypt because he murdered someone. He wasn't qualified. And he, was measuring himself in the flesh, and he's like, God, I can't do this. Like, why me? I can't do this. Why are you choosing me? And so God was like, you can do it because I'm God. Hello, I'm manifesting myself to you. Go do it, And he's like, no, I can't. And I was like, wow, that's so real. How many times do we do that in our own lives? God's manifesting Himself day after day, week after week, year after year, and we still feel inadequate. I have to face off those feelings myself. And God's like, Eve, come on, girl. You can do this. And I'm like, I don't know if I can. I don't know if I'm the right person for the job. And He's like, rise up, because I've called you to do something, and I didn't call someone else to do it. I called you to do it, and I will make you able, and I have made you capable, because you are not who you are in the flesh. You are who I created you to be in the spirit, and that's why you have the authority and the power. So God calls Moses, but Moses can't speak, so God says, fine, bring your brother Aaron with you to speak to the Israelites. So you know the story. They go through the plagues. They go through all the hoopla, all the stuff. And finally, Pharaoh lets them go. And it even says that, there was a shortcut to where they were going, but God said, I can't send them that way. They might see war and turn back to Egypt. And you're kind of like, really? Like, the mindset of slavery will keep you trapped. It will keep you so tied to the roots of slavery that any resistance will send you running back to the bondage that you were just a part of. We need to be aware of that. We cannot back down when we see a war. We cannot back down when we see conflict. When we see something that stands in our way that's trying to boast itself against us, we cannot run back to the slavery that we were once a part of. We have to move forward in the calling of Christ and know without a shadow of a doubt that our God is with us. And if he is with us, then no one and no man can stand against us. And if that's our resolve, we will not be stopped. We will go forward in the calling, and we will have victory and success, and it doesn't matter what it looks like. It doesn't matter what anyone says about it. We will rise up in our holy anointing, and we will tear the walls of the enemy down, not only in our lives, but in other people's lives. So the Israelites, these guys, God called them a stiff-necked people, and they were, man. They were stiff-necked. They get to the Red Sea, and by the way, they've had the Lord following them in a cloud the whole time, like giving them light by night, giving them, you're thinking, what does this scene even look like? These are miracles we haven't even seen, really, And this is what they're walking in. So they get to the Red Sea, and Pharaoh's army decides to come and attack them, and they turn on Moses. These guys are petty. They turn on Moses so fast it would make your head spin. They're like, what did you do, Moses? You let us out here to die? Why? Weren't there enough graves in Egypt? You had to bring us here to die? And he's like, simmer. I think Moses was a cool guy. He seemed like super chill for the most part. He was just like, God's got it. And so God speaks to Moses, parts the Red Sea. The Israelites walk through on dry ground, drown the Egyptian army. And it was God's plan because he wanted to show his power. He said, because I want to show my power, because I want to put down their prideful arrogance about who they think they are, I'm going to allow this to happen. And we have to remember that. When we feel like we've made it, we're in freedom, but then all of a sudden our enemies reemerge and show up again, and we're like, God, I thought that we were past this. What's going on? We need to stand before him in peace, knowing that his plan is out of all proportion to ours. And we're not afraid of the enemy. He's already delivered us from the enemy. And we don't need to go back to the old mindset that lives in fear of these people that are trying to put us in bondage. We're not in fear anymore. Perfect love has cast out all fear. So on the other side of the Red Sea, these guys are just like writing songs to God, dancing, like celebrating, worshiping God. They're so excited. Like they've seen the hand of God move over and over and over again. And it's like the good days were there, whatever. 3 days later, they don't have water. And they're back at it with Moses. What's wrong with you? Why did you bring us here? We don't have any water. The attitude of these people was so fickle. They were just such fickle people. It's interesting. They saw miracle after miracle after miracle, but they quickly forgot. So quickly they forgot the miracles. As soon as they faced resistance, as soon as they faced discomfort, all of a sudden the miracles of yesterday were gone, and they had no expectation and no hope of a future. We do not want to be the Israelites. We are not the Israelites. God's purpose for them was never about comfort. He wasn't trying to make them as comfortable as possible. That was never the point. And I feel like that's so applicable to us today. God's not interested in making us as comfortable as possible, as rich as possible, as great as possible, as popular as possible. That's not his goal for us. Those are earthly measurements. And that's not what the kingdom is about. But sometimes on the road of salvation in Christianity, like as a baby Christian, we step into this new thing and we hear these great promises of God, and sometimes we interpret it with an earthly mindset. And we think it's going to be great. It's going to be like, got a sugar daddy in heaven, all things are good, never going to have to face a thing. God is not the genie of the lamp, people. He's not. He doesn't grant wishes. That's not what it's about. He's not trying to spoil you. He's a good father. That's who he is. He's a father. He is not some mythological creature in the sky. He's a father. He's our father. And as I think about that and look at my own life and my own family and how that plays out, like I love God. I love how he created everything in the kingdom to have its shadow and representation in the earth so that we could understand. When I look at my husband and how he raises our kids, He's a good father. And you know something about him? He always provides for every need, without question. Like, that's his goal for our family. He is a provider. Like, at heart, he's truly like a provider. And then on top of that, he really wants to meet the desires of our hearts. He really wants to go out of his way to give us the things that we love, especially to his children. He wants them to enjoy life. However, when they step out of line, he is a good father and he disciplines them. He disciplines them because he loves them. There are boundaries in our house because of the Father. There are expectations in our house because of the Father. There are ways we conduct ourselves in the house because of the Father. Because his love for us is so great that he would never let us fail. But it's so great that he would never let us fail in weakness and create spoiled, weak children. That's not his goal for you. You're going to face things in this life. The Israelites had to face the hardship in order to inherit the promise. They had to learn how to trust in their Father in order to walk into the promise that he had for them. But they kept forgetting the goodness. They kept forgetting the breakthrough. They kept forgetting the miraculous. And at every turn along their journey, there was praises mixed with complaints on their tongue. They were complaining 1 second and praising the next, and praising 1 second and complaining the next. And you know, guys, we cannot be people who have praises and curses on our tongues. We are not those people. We need to get this member of our bodies under the submission of Christ. It's so vitally important. It's so vital. So God the Father, but you know what? He's so gracious. He never gave up on them. He just kept sticking with it, kept sticking with it. It's like, okay, these people are stiff-necked bunch of, he was like irritated with these people, but he kept being like, okay, I'm going to reveal myself to them. I'm going to do these things for them. They're my chosen people. I'm going to fulfill my promise to their fathers because their fathers had faith. And like, that's cool too, because it says he blesses thousands. He curses to the third and fourth generation, but he blesses to 1,000. So according to Abraham's faith, the father of them all, they were blessed, even though they were a mess. So anyway, so God, finally it kind of comes down to all this where they end up at Mount Sinai, and God comes down in a cloud of, fire basically on that mountain. I'm just going to read it to you. Let's see where I am. All right, so Exodus 19. It says in Moses, chapter 19, verse 3, and Moses went up to God, and the Lord called to him from the mountain, saying, thus you shall say to the house of Jacob, and tell the children of Israel, you have seen what I did to the Egyptians, and how I bore you on eagle's wings and brought you to myself. Now, therefore, if you will indeed obey my voice and keep my covenant, then you shall be a special treasure to me above all people. For all the earth is mine, and you shall be to me a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. These are the words which you shall speak to the children of Israel. So Moses came and called for the elders of the people and laid before all of them these words which the Lord commanded him. Then all the people answered together and said, all that the Lord has spoken, we will do. They were on a high right now, okay? They were in a good place. They were like, yes, Lord, we're on board with you. We love you. You are awesome. Okay, so jumping down to Exodus 19:16, it says, that it came to pass on the third day in the morning that there were thunderings and lightnings and a thick cloud on the mountain. And the sound of the trumpet was very loud, so that all the people who were in the camp trembled. And Moses brought the people out of the camp to meet with God. And they stood at the foot of the mountain. Now Mount Sinai was completely in smoke because the Lord descended upon it in fire. Its smoke ascended like the smoke of a furnace, and the whole mountain quaked greatly. And when the blast of the trumpet sounded long and became louder and louder, Moses spoke, and God answered him by voice. Then the Lord came down upon Mount Sinai at the top of the mountain, and the Lord called Moses to the top of the mountain, and Moses went up. So these guys are gathered around Mount Sinai, and God is doing yet again another miraculous, marvelous, work of wonder in front of them. He's like pulling out all the stops. I'm going to show these people who I am. They are going to see me. They are going to love me. So God then starts to speak the 10 Commandments. So he tells them the 10 Commandments. And it says in Exodus 20, verse 18, it says, "Now all the people witnessed the thunderings and the lightning flashes and the sound of the trumpet and the mountain smoking. And when the people saw it, they trembled and stood afar off. Then they said to Moses, 'You speak with us and we will hear, but let not God speak with us, lest we die.'" They were afraid. They should have been afraid. They were. And Moses said to the people, "Do not fear, for God has come to test you, and that his fear may be before you, so you may not sin." So the people stood afar off, but Moses drew near to the thick darkness where God was. And then the Lord said to Moses, "Thus you shall say to the children of Israel, 'You have seen that I have talked with you from heaven.'" So that means that they all heard his voice. They heard him speak out those 10 commandments in his fiery mountain of smoke and thunder and trumpets. Okay, so these guys were not like in the dark. This was not a mystery. God of heaven was speaking to them in an audible voice. So anyway, Moses goes up the mountain with God. God's giving him the laws, the laws to form their nation. And he ends up staying up there for 40 days. So sometime in the middle of this 40 days, these people are like, listen to what they say. Exodus 32, 1 through 5. "When the people saw that Moses was so long in coming down from the mountain, they gathered around Aaron," sidekick, "and said, 'Come, make us gods who will go before us. As for this fellow Moses who brought us up out of Egypt, we don't know what happened to him.'" What? I can't with people. The guy's been gone for maybe a month. I mean, this isn't even when he came back. Like, who knows how long it's been? They have already forgotten. They've already forgotten. God addressed this specific thing in the 10 Commandments. He said, "You will not make any images before me, nothing of the land or the sea or the earth." He said that. He said it in like plain English, and these guys are, "Come on, Aaron, let's build a calf, golden one. We need something to worship. Moses is gone. Who knows who he was anyway?" Then Aaron, hello, God called him earlier in Exodus, the prophet that was standing next to Moses. He was proclaiming next to Moses the deliverance of the Israelites. He was the number 2 guy. He was the man. He was called for the job. And Aaron says, "Take off the gold earrings that your wives and your sons and your daughters are wearing. Bring them to me." So all the people took off their earrings and brought them to Aaron. He took what they had, they handed him, and and made it into an idol, cast in the shape of a calf, fashioning with a tool. And they said, "These are your gods, Israel, who brought you out of Egypt." When Aaron saw this, he built an altar in front of the calf, as you do. What? Aaron, not only are these stiff-necked people so they don't get it. Even Aaron, come on, man. You have been by the side of the anointed one. You have been called by God. You've been delivering the messages from heaven, and you turn away after 30 days without your leader? We are not Israel. We are not Israel, and we will not be like Israel. So anyway, Moses comes back down, smashes the 10, the tablets that he has everything written on, and they go into the camp basically and kill 3,000 people because it was bad. So it was bad. Aaron straightened right out, apparently. He got wise to this. Okay, Moses is like, "What are you doing?" He's like, "I don't know, the people wanted it. I just did what they wanted." Come on. Come on. We're called to better things than that. We are not people pleasers. We are not the 1 second that our pastor turns away and walks out and ministers in Canada. We don't go and just start people pleasing. No, we are called to something. God has anointed us for a purpose. He's called us into something greater than people pleasing, something greater than building idols. Not me, not me, not me. Because you know what the idol is in our lives? We don't struggle with building golden calves and worshiping them. We've graduated. You know the idol that we struggle not to serve? It is our own understanding. That's usually our idol. There's many idols. But I think that most people in the Christian world, just like the Israelites, they want to follow God. They want a God, right? They're building one when they thought the other one was gone. They want to follow God. But what happens is there's a conflict between their own understanding and the ways of the kingdom. And in our culture, in our society, we've been trained to honor our own understanding above anything else. That's the calling of this world. That's the way of the world. You know? We're trained to honor that. And these Israelites, that's what they did. They said, I don't understand. I don't understand where Moses went, but I need a God to follow. I need something to worship. I don't know why I'm out here. I'd rather be back in Egypt, a slave, because at least there I had food. So let me build a calf. That makes sense. That seems like it makes sense. And we do that sometimes in our own lives. We do that because, and I think sometimes because we're ignorant of the Word of God. So, in my life, I'm thankful. I'm so thankful. God started talking to me at a young age. He started speaking to me at a young age. But he said some funny things to a young girl. He said, one of the first prophecies I remember receiving, I was probably 14, who knows, around there. And this guy's like, you're going to be married one day. And I was like, okay. I thought so, but thanks for telling. I don't know, it was weird. It was almost unnerving. I'm like, oh gosh, is it in danger? I'm not getting married one day. He's got to tell it to me. It's going to be really hard. I didn't know. I didn't know what to do with that. And then, maybe a couple years later, another person prophesied the same thing over me, someone else totally different who's never heard that. You're going to be married one day. And I was like, okay. I wasn't worried until now. I always thought I was until now. Now I'm concerned. And so I just was like, okay, I don't know. I don't understand, whatever. It's kind of one of those things that you don't even know what to do with it. And as my life went on, and I didn't really know what to do with those words, they were just there. They were floating around. I also had this other word that God kept speaking to me. Never worry about money. You must never worry about money. I was like, oh, okay. I didn't worry about money. I was a teenager. I didn't need any money to live. I was just floating through life. And it was these things that God was saying to me, they didn't make any sense. I didn't understand them. But they were a word from God that was specific to me for my life. Well, so by and by, I go to, I'm growing up. I'm going through the whole process. I'm graduating from college. I'm working at jobs. I'm doing all the things. And I had a tendency as a teenager. So I was thinking about this morning, and this is probably totally not that relatable to a lot of people, but maybe. As an 18-year-old, I was completely obsessed with my credit score. I'm not kidding. I started early on this stuff. I was like, I've got to get a good credit score so I can buy a house, I've got to get a credit card and use it and then pay it off every month. I've got to keep track of everything. I was really focused on my FICO score. It was super important to me. I have no idea where I got that from. But it was big. It was a big deal. I remember when Mark and I started dating, he was 20, and he didn't even know what a credit score was. I was kind of oh, well, okay. It was not impressing me at all. And I'm like, you need to have a good credit score or blah, blah, blah. I had all these, I don't know what it was. I was really obsessed with this thing, and money was very important. And not I was obsessed with money, but I was obsessed with everything being perfect in my finances. I had this job once where on Fridays, all I had to do was sit in the office and answer phone calls and nothing else. I had nothing else to do. So every Friday for 4 hours, I would sit there. So you know what I did? I started balancing my checkbook in to the 100th degree. I started this binder of all my finances, and I would print all my bank statements and highlight things and write notes and have all this thing. What was I doing? I was maybe 19. This was what I was doing with my 4 free hours of work time, in this office. I didn't think it was weird until now. I look back and I'm like, wow, that was a little obsessive. But I had this thing, right, about money. It needed to be right. I needed to pay everything on time. I needed to have a good credit score. I needed to buy a house. I needed to not make mistakes. I needed to do everything right. And I think it's those were the moments I didn't understand, but there was something in me that wanted to tend towards fear and worry about money. I needed everything to be right because I was afraid of making mistakes. So, but I had all these words, and I was going along in life, and then, I moved out of the country for a year, and I went to Hillsong College, and I was, dating other people over there, and all this stuff was happening, and I was confused. Like, at the end of my first year there, I was like, should I come home or should I stay? And that was the question, like, what was I going to do? And it's, like, pretty simple. It's, like, not really that groundbreaking. Like, either decision is fine. I didn't feel a specific call or word from God. I didn't know. It was like I wanted to stay because I was there living it out, but I wasn't sure if I should. So I called my parents, and they were like, we really feel like God's saying for you to come home. So I just had made a decision up at that point in my life. I'd gone through some things where I was like, I'm just going to listen. From now on, like, I hit this point in my life where I'd gone through trials and tragedy and all of these horrible things, and I just decided, I'm never doing that again. I'm not walking down that road, and I know the solution to not walk down that road. I'm going to listen to the authority that God has placed in my life. And it wasn't just my parents, it was their position in my life. They were my spiritual authority. They were my mother and father in the faith, maybe even, just as much as they were my parents in the natural. So now I had the choice to make. I was grown up. I was 21. I could do whatever I wanted. And so I had to now face this. And I had a lot of other voices saying, why would you go home? Because your parents said so. Like, that's so dumb. That was the other side of the equation. They're like, no, you're supposed to be here. You're supposed to stay. There were a lot of voices in that camp. Now, when you're 21 years old and you don't know who you are, you're going to listen to the voice that feels good, right? Like, you're going to just start listening to whatever voice seems like you want to do it more. You're like, yeah, that sounds like God. Well, everyone's saying they're talking from God, so I'm just going to go with this option. Sounds better to me. That's how a lot of Christians live their lives. I hear more people blame their bad decisions on God. God, no. Don't blame your bad decisions on God. So anyway, so as I'm walking through this process, I get a phone call in Australia from Joe Parator. Joe Parator. I never expected to get a phone call from Joe Parator in Australia. And he was crying, and he was telling me, Eve, God showed me your husband. And your husband is not some random guy. He's a son of the house. And he had this whole word for me that he went on. And I got off the phone with him, and I thought, well, not that me staying or going had anything to do with the husband. That wasn't really the point. But he was saying, your future is not there. Your future is here, and God's telling me that he wants you to know that your future's here. And I heard that. I heard what he was saying. Okay, all right, I hear that. And, there's still other voices on the other side saying, who cares what he says, But I had to decide. But I feel so blessed because I knew the way that God worked is not through any old Joe Schmo and any voice. Not that he can't work that way, but the way he works is through the order that he's established in his kingdom. So God speaks through those that he has put in authority over you. He does. He does. Primarily, the voice of God will come through the people that have invested their lives to love you. Joe Parator was one of those people. He wasn't just anyone. He wasn't just some guy who knew God. He was a man who had sacrificed his life to invest in this house, which in effect invested in me. And I knew the love that he had for me because I knew what kind of a man he was. And that changed the direction, maybe, of my future, what Joe said. And I just made a firm resolution right there. I was like, okay, that's it. I already told God I'm going to do the right thing from now on. I'm not going to be flimsy in my emotions and go this way and that way, whatever I feel like. I'm just going to do what God says. And I knew that was the voice of God. So I come home, and lo and behold, I start dating Mark 3 months later or something. And we get married like a year and a half later. And now, okay, the point of my life, and I don't want to diminish it down to just, I wasn't on the hunt for a husband. That wasn't what I was doing. I was never on the hunt for a husband. But God had said to me, you're going to be married. And so I remember that. What does that mean? Okay, I'm married. It really wasn't that, I don't know. It was did I need a prophecy about that? It seemed like it worked out pretty easily, pretty naturally. No, I don't know. But as we entered our lives together in marriage, we started walking down these roads of trial comes at you no matter where you are in life. You will face trial. And so Mark had a job and he traveled. It was a good job, but he was always on the road. He was always traveling. And so, we knew in our hearts that God wanted us to be planted here. And so we planted ourselves here. And he was traveling, though. He was gone, most of the week, most weeks. And it was a trial. It was a trial of faith because because it didn't seem right. And in my own human reasoning, I kept trying to sort it out and work it out and being like, God, why is this happening? What did we do wrong? Why are we in this situation? Not at first, but a couple years in, you're kind of like, I am so tired of this. And we're praying that he wouldn't have to travel anymore, nothing's happening. And you're like, God, what are we doing wrong? And so then me and all of my impulsiveness, I start wanting to take the reins of my life into my own hands. And I start saying to Mark, we just need to move. That's it. I can't do this anymore. I'm done. I'm done with this. And he's like, no, we're supposed to be planted here. God called us here, and we knew that. That's why we're here. We're not giving up. We're not changing course. And I'm over here, like the Israelites, up and down and up and down. And he's like, staying the course. He's like, no, I know what God called me to do, and I'm not moving off the path. I don't care how hard it is. And I'm like, but why? A little Miss Emotional over here. The Israelite was coming out hard in those moments. And I was like, I can't do that. I was flailing and wailing and all of this stuff. And God is the conductor. He's the conductor of your life. So here's the thing about it, okay? Because God had called me to certain things. He had called me to not worry about money. He had called me into a specific marriage, and that's what I started to see. He didn't call me into any marriage. He wasn't telling me you're going to get married because it was a question mark. He was telling me there's significance in who you marry. He was trying to awaken my consciousness to that. He was saying, Eve, it's not just anyone. It's not just anything. And, I'm not saying that that's everyone's case. I don't necessarily think everyone's going to get a word from God about exactly who they should marry. But God was saying to me, there is someone for you. Okay? And it was him. And we're in this relationship, and I'm like getting really upset about this whole scenario, and I'm like, we need to change lanes. We didn't hear from God. Like, this isn't working out. He's leaving us to die in the wilderness. Like, this is how I'm feeling. We need to move. And he's like, Eve, we're going to stay the course. We're not moving off this course. And we didn't move off that course, but do you know what it did to me? Is it stirred up something inside of me. Because all my life, because of these words I had from God, because of my upbringing, I saw myself as a person of faith, willing to live by faith, right? Like, okay, so with finances, I had no problem. Even though maybe I wanted everything to be perfect, I had no problem going for gold. Like, I didn't care what our finances were. I was like, whatever God says, we'll do it. Mark, Mr. Accountant over here, was a little more like, this is what we can do, this is how much we have, and whatever. So there's these things that we were going through. But everything that he was almost in direct conflict to who I was, right? And so we're in this marriage, but I'm like, but this is what God called us to. And I started to see that what he brought to the table was a level. It leveled me out. It brought me down to earth because I had these callings on my life, and they were over here. They were faith, and they were big, and they were all of these things. But what comes with that is it can be impulsive. It could be faith without the evidence of what it's meant to produce. But Mr. Stable over here was like, towing a hard line that we're not going to make these big faith moves without the evidence. So what does that mean for me? I've got to produce the works. I've got to produce the outcome. My faith has to produce something in order to get him to move. Right? I can't just go out. So along the journey of life, we meet Andre Bronkhorst. This prophetic conference is going to be amazing. God's going to rewrite some things in your life. It's a blank slate that's before you, and he's going to write new things on it, and you need to be there so you don't miss it. So we meet Andre Bronkhorst. We're still in the throes of all of this stuff. And Andre prophesies over us, and he says, I see you're moving into a house. It's a big house, and it's the desire of your heart. And that was pretty much it. And I was like, all right, rock on, let's go. So I'm like, let's go start looking at houses. Mark's like, no, we can't afford that house. I know. I'm like, come on, God said it, let's do it. And he's like, we need the provision to get that house, And so it's these worlds of so I would have been up for buying that house tomorrow and make it happen by faith, But Mark's like, no, we gotta believe for the provision. So what he did in my life in that scenario, he towed a hard line. And it made me push into faith in a way that I wasn't pushing into faith because I knew I had to have results in order for him to jump on board and move. He wasn't just going to do anything. God called us together for a purpose. There was purpose in our union. And as we've been walking this road, he's been revealing it. Okay, so me, the faith one, the faith walker, whatever, I am like, okay, let me put this faith to action. Let me do something about it. I start praying. I start pushing into the realms of heaven, because now it's not about the house. It's about the job. It's about the house. It's about the destiny of God on my life. And I start pushing the envelope. 5:30 every morning. I told you that's my hour. 5:30 every morning. I start pushing and pushing. And you guys have heard this story before, and I'm not trying to just retell stories, but I'm trying to reveal something. I start pushing into my gift. Why? Because my husband said, no, we're not just going to be flighty and just do whatever we want. So now I have to push into my gift. I start pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing. And guess what? 6 months later, Mark has a new job. He's not traveling anymore. 6 months after that prophecy from Andre. A year later, we're living in a new house, in the house that he prophesied over us. And just this past summer, we're sitting in the house that Andre prophesied. Mark's got the job that we were praying for. The labor of faith, the product of faith. The product of what we had been believing for was now unfolding. So Ed Trout comes to minister to a group of us at my house, and we're sitting there, and he's prophesying. And he says to me, the enemy had plans for your life. He wanted to get you out of here. He tried to pull you a different direction. He didn't want you here. He tried to distract you. But you kept readjusting. You kept readjusting, realigning, getting back to where God called you to be. And I thought, oh, yeah, I did. You have no idea. Yes, I did. I gave up things to realign myself with the will of God. Not because it's what I felt like doing, but it's because what my leadership and the people who loved and invested in me revealed from heaven to me, and I decided to have ears to hear, and I readjusted. And he said, and your husband, he keeps you in line. He's like, you're all over the place, but he keeps you. You know how far you can go with him. That's so true. And it was like, I just saw the conductor conducting my life. He was conducting my life. And all the things that he was speaking and had spoken just started to weave together in this tapestry. And I thought, this is not coincidence in my life. All these things are not coincidence. It's not just for my comfort. It's not just for my pleasure. It's for the advancement of his kingdom. There's purpose. There's life in it. There's life and purpose in our marriage. There's life and purpose in our family. There's life and purpose in what God has spoken to you. And it might not make sense to your understanding right now, but there is something that's going to come out of it. And you're going to look back and go, whoa. So, yeah, it's good. So get this. It was the next day after Ed Trout was at my house that someone said, do you know that yesterday was 4 years to the day since Andre was here the first time? I'm like, what? To the day? So we look back, to the day. 4 years after Andre stood here and didn't know me from whoever and prophesied that house over me. 4 years to the day later, Ed Trout's sitting there prophesying over me in that house. Wow. And he's talking about seasons. He's speaking to our church, and he's talking about that we run in 3 and 4 year seasons. And that we're at the end of one and that we're at the beginning of a new one. And I'm standing there the next day going the orchestrator, the director of the symphony. He has his hand in everything. It's not a coincidence that he was sitting there that day. It's not a coincidence that he was revealing and kind of opening my eyes to things in my life that God had been weaving together for years and years and years and years. It was a testament to me. And maybe this isn't this isn't a testimony. It's maybe it doesn't move you, what I'm saying. It's not this big testimony, but it's for me, I'm telling you, standing there, watching all the words that God has said. Why did he say them? Look, it's not over. Those words that he spoke to me are not over. He didn't just speak them to me for that time. He didn't speak them to me just for up to now. They go forward. He said something to me, Eve, you are going to be married. Eve, you must not worry about money. Okay, the temptation has been there to ignore the word and to do whatever I want, to lean on my own understanding in order to further myself in life. The fear of finances has come upon me before, being how are we going to pay for this? And the voice of God is going, don't worry about money. And I am vexed. How do I choose? How do I choose? This worry feels so real. It feels so necessary. It feels so justified. I want to worry about it. I want to say, why did you buy those golf clubs? But the voice of God was over here. Stop worrying about money. Stop it. It's not your destiny. It's not who I've called you to be. It's not what I've spoken over you. He's a good father. And he reminds you, and he brought me through these things. He brought me up and down these roller coasters, but he brought me through the trial because he needed to produce something inside of me that could stand. Come on. He needs to produce something inside of us that can stand. It wasn't according to my own understanding. My own understanding wanted to get in the way and say, we missed God. Why do you have to travel? Why is God not answering our prayers? We're doing something wrong. We need to take the reins back and change lanes. And God was saying, through my husband, no, we're not changing lanes. We know the destiny that God has called us to, and we're staying on this course, and we're going to continue in faith to push forward. And when Ed Trout sat there and said, the devil tried to get you out of here, it hit me so hard. I was like, oh, you have no idea. He tried through my own understanding to move me off the course of the will of God for my life, because the will of God for your life is never going to be comprehensible through your own understanding. And I hope you can hear that today. The Israelites kept functioning out of their own understanding. I was functioning out of my own understanding. I was flailing. I was going through the emotional roller coaster. I didn't have to face that if I would have just chosen to trust the word of God. I didn't have to face that. And guess what? I'm not facing it again. That's the good news. I went around that mountain already. And now the trials that come my way, yeah, they want to push and pull and blow me this way and that way. But you know what? I know where I stand. I stand firm, my feet planted on the ground. I know who my God is. He's never failed me. He's never let me down. He's never given up on me. His words have never returned to him void in my life. And I refuse to be moved. I will not give up my promises because of a trial. I will not move in other direction because of resistance. I will not back down because of discomfort. I will push through whatever is required of me to push through to achieve and attain the glory of what God's called me to do. And I believe that this is a season of that in our church. This place is filled with crazy, radical people who dare to believe the word of God in their life. And it doesn't matter what their eyes see. It doesn't matter how many times the wind blows. You know who you are, and you keep moving forward in the will of Christ for your life. It's a spiritual journey, and nothing can stop you. Come on. The conductor sees you. He knows your part. He's orchestrating it all together. It's going to make a beautiful sound. And we're doing it together. Arm in arm and hand in hand. And I support you in your role. I support you in the role that you play. And I want to champion you, and I want to serve you. And I want to see you be the best that God has called you to be. And that's my commission from God, is that I'm going to stand in the places that he's given me and empower his people. I'm going to stand in the places he's given me, and I'm going to bring unity to those places. The voice of division is not going to be found on my tongue. But unity and peace, that's what I'm going to bring to the table. Could you guys stand up with me? God. Just lift your hands to heaven. God, you are so good. God, we just thank you right now. We thank you for what's before us. God, what's before us is bright and beautiful. And I believe, God, that you have timed this thing perfectly, this conference that we're about to enter into. I believe it's your timing. I believe it's your will. And I believe that you are going to bring words of direction into people's lives that are going to cause them to rise up in who you've called them to be on a new level, in a new way. And you are going to write some new things in our future that we don't even know about right now, God. And we just open ourselves up to those things right now. God, we say we are not going to just be the Israelites going back and forth and up and down and all over the place in our emotions. But God, we are going to be faithful to the end. We are going to be faithful to the call. We will not let our emotions dictate what we do day in and day out. We will not let our feelings rise up above you. We will not lean on our own understanding, but we will dive in with the mind of Christ, and we will trust in all of your ways above our ways, God. I thank you for this body of believers, God. I just thank you that you have surrounded us. You surrounded us with so much goodness, so much richness, God. You've brought all of these beautiful people together to make this beautiful sound, God. And we just fix our eyes on you. We fix our eyes on you right now. And we thank you, God, that there is going to be an outpouring of greatness that comes out from among us. And it's not greatness in the flesh, but it's the greatness of the Spirit. The greatness of your Spirit at work in us is going to produce something in this day and age. And we just commit it to you. In Jesus' name, amen.